Good morning, everybody. My name is Dusten. I'm with Cisco CX. First and foremost, I want to apologize if you're getting a glare off the head. I asked them to turn down or powder my head, but I was unsuccessful. Again, I'm with Cisco Services, CX, and I'm the service delivery leader for the Cox account. And I'm going to talk a little bit about our journey with Cox Communications. It's very interesting because as I sit and hear some of the journeys of others, they all sound very similar. I think we start off with the hardest thing. We fail, we succeed, we fail harder, we succeed, and then again fall down. But I think we've done a very good job of recovery. And one of the things that we've focused on through this journey in leveraging NSO is, breaking the mold of how we've done things, learning from our mistakes. In the beginning, we were working specifically with the Cox application dev team, the IT environment. But we found that there was a lot of latency between information being exchanged. CX would have requirements, requests, it would go to the Cox IT team, that would then go out to the engineering operations teams, the engineering operations teams would vet it out, come back to IT gets back to us. And on some of our engagements, we were losing up to 45, 50 business days in our sprints. So we had to break that mold, and that's one of the things we're doing now, and that's why we brought our partners from Cox Engineering and Operations in an effort to become more agile. I know everybody loves to use the word agile, but that's really the truth. We want to include those tech domains inside our Scrum sessions, so we're going directly to the source of the user communities. So one of the things we're going to talk about here is, first of all, I'm going to hand this over to John Andrews. Again, he is the director of Cox Access Engineering. He owns the access environment. So Cox, not unlike any other service provider, even though they're a cable provider, they have a metro, they have a data center, and obviously the focus here is on the cable access network. But through this process that we're undertaking with Cox, it's called Network Transformation, where they're deploying new technology through Cisco called MOPs. We will be deploying, utilizing NSO, over 100,000 network elements in the next 5 to 10 years, 100,000. And like most network elements, there's going to be software upgrades, there's going to be configuration changes, there's going to be things that break. So some of the things that we're focusing on right now are just the low-lying fruit. How do we turn things up faster? How do we onboard things faster? How do we perform software upgrades faster, including in-service software upgrades? Some of the access devices that Cox utilizes, called the CBR8, have 40, 50, 60, 70,000 customers on there. So if we can automate an in-service software upgrade process that eliminates any impact to downtime, people are happy. Their internet works, their cable works, their kids can play PS4 without any interruption. So those are the things we're really focusing on. So what I'm going to do quickly is turn this over to John Andrews. Again, he is the Director of Sustaining Engineering. His team really owns the automation use cases and how they're used. So let me hand it over to JC.
Hi, my name is John Andrews with Cox Communication. Everybody calls me JC. So there have been a lot of good speakers during this conference already, and I'm afraid I'm going to sound a little bit like a broken record. You're going to hear a lot of the same themes. So it's very nice being at this conference and hearing everybody's battling the same things, going after the same things. Might be slightly different, but overall it's about the same. So even before we got into deploying RPDs and doing some aggressive node splitting, we knew automation was needed. There's no way you can keep up with the complexity of the network. The amount of logical and physical connections are increasing tenfold. The amount of nodes that you have deployed are increasing tenfold. So, and obviously all of us can't continue to throw headcount at it, labor. So we have to figure out ways of doing things smarter. And obviously automation is part of that. The other thing that we've realized, and especially after going into an RPD deployment, was that it takes a village. You need all kinds of different departments to be actively engaged. And as Scott was kind of alluding to, there's a latency between the different groups. So if you need 10 or 20 groups involved in the deployment of something, and there's a latency between the groups of actually getting the engagement and getting their task accomplished, well, then that creates a longer lead time of being able to deploy. And that's another thing that automation is very helpful. We're also, the field teams, we're introducing some mobile apps. So as they're on the go out in the field, they can utilize these mobile apps to kick off automation that will deploy a product like an RPD. And it doesn't cause a swivel chair effect where groups behind the scene have to get engaged. So again, it speeds up, creates efficiencies. Some of the things that we needed in our business case was that we needed it to be vendor agnostic. We need to be able to choose our vendors as we go, right? So our automation needs to work with several different vendors. Our Cisco partners have been very good at working towards that goal. I think that's pretty much it, Scott. I mean, the rest of it, I'm beating a dead horse. They all have been talking about it all week.
Thanks. So one of the things I want to highlight, I talked a little bit about my background. There we go. Want to talk about journey. I got to get out of that light. I'm sorry. I'm probably blinding all of you again. So one of the things I want to talk about, the journey that I mentioned previously. And there's some folks in this room, some in the very front, that I've been with Cisco 2.5 years. And my second week on the job, I was pulled in and said, we have a problem. Houston, we have a problem. So Frederick and his team were wonderful in working with us, even though it was on Saturday and Sunday to get things right. But if you look at the manual provision, that's where Cox was. So again, over this NT 2.0 journey, which Cox is calling that, they will be turning up over 100,000 devices over the next 5 to 10 years. But before that, the decision was made to start with the hardest thing, service provisioning of their optical and metro Ethernet services. What we found as we started to go through that journey is that Cox may have had as many as 300,000 services or instances, and as many differences as well. And it was a very, very difficult thing to navigate through. So there was a pivot immediately to go to business internet, metro Ethernet service provisioning for Greenfield. But then working with the NSO team, who I can't thank enough, and I saw Elf out the other day and said thank you so much for all your help in the beginning, we were able to do significant prototyping around those brownfield environments and those services, and we were able to deploy that. From there, as we start to talk about the NT 2.0 transition, we started to talk about the low-lying fruit, right? I think we said, we started with the hard stuff, we weren't very successful. And let me step back too. Somebody made a comment yesterday, I think it was one of the first journeys, you have to stay interested. And that was the biggest challenge through this journey, is people would lose interest because they weren't seeing the value. They saw cycles and cycles and cycles of work, but no value. But as we started to progress through this journey, we started to look at some of the low-lying fruit. Let's get some wins. Let's show the value of NSO as an orchestration tool. So we started to focus on device service turn up and onboarding. Again, 100,000 platforms. How can we turn those up faster? How can we onboard those existing devices? Again, to JC's point, it's a multi-vendor network. So we had to focus on other vendors as well. Leveraging NSO and the NEDs, there was not an issue there. OS upgrades. Again, I'm sure most of you work with Cisco and other vendors. There's a lot of upgrades that come day in and day out, whether it's for enhancements, bugs, fixes. So we had to figure out a way to do OS upgrades, including, like I said, in-service software upgrades. That's critical. How do we limit the impact to the end user? That is absolutely critical to a successful customer experience. Pre and post checks, config management, market variances. Again, we talked about the variances in the services provisioning. It's the same thing for device. Cox is made up of 20 some odd different individual markets at one point where everybody did their own thing. Obviously through automation, we're starting to consolidate and create processes around that. But that's really where we started to get some victories, started to get some wins with some of the low-lying fruit. Then we said, what can we do further? What's a little harder? What's going to add a little more value? So then we went into the deeper integration. We started to do all the integration with the back office systems. In their inventory management system, IPAM, ticketing, SmartPhy Manager. SmartPhy Manager is a Cisco solution from the cable BU that has NSO built into it, where we are turning up RPDs. And for those of you not familiar with the cable environment, I won't go into that. We can talk about an RPD over a drink or two. Mobile application integration, and then there is an Apogee layer that sits in between all of our integration in the Cox environment. So you can see we started to go a little deeper, right? Started to push the envelope of what we were trying to automate. Now we're even going further. Now that we're working directly with JC and the users in the environment, we're looking at OS upgrades for all devices. Again, vendor agnostic. Pre and post checks on new devices as well. Pre and post checks, for those of you who aren't familiar with that, I'm sure a lot of you are, Cox is very big on doing validation. They inspect what they expect from their configurations, from their devices. Using NSO and other tools, we have been able to shorten the duration of a pre and post check on a cable broadband router from about 40 minutes down to about 1:30. And it provides all the differences and all the variations that they need to be aware of. So we're starting to do some other things, RPD packet provisioner. Today there's a lot of manual input, CLI, into some of these SmartPhy devices via their databases that inventory that information. But I'm sure many of you have these inventory databases which are not accurate. We call them the database of record, but they're really not. So how do we go out and query the network, identify what's really in the network, pull that data in, push it to new devices, and then on the back end, update the inventory database. Other things we're doing, decommissioning, device replacements, swaps, matching. Swaps are interesting because in this remote fire environment, and these 100,000 devices that will be installed, some of these are things that sit on the side of the street. Guess what? Cars drive by. They hit them. They're damaged. So how can Cox quickly swap out one physically and then automate the turnover of that device, limiting the impact and downtime to customers? So as you see, it's an upward trend in our innovation and what we're doing as far as provisioning, service turn up, other things around automation. This is just the beginning. We're really excited on the things that NSO can do for us in the future. We're really focusing now on how do we change that model? How do we become more agile? I think, I hate throwing that word out there because everybody loves to use the agile word, but it's true. And how do we also bring the tech domains, the users of these devices into the environment and remove the IT teams a little bit, right? Again, I talked about there's a lot of latency. I think in some of those early developments, like I said, we had 50, 60 days, business days of lost time trying to gather requirements. So we're moving to this new model. We're calling it a factory model, again, leveraging NSO and other solutions. Lastly, I just want to highlight here, these are some of the estimates that we feel confident about in reporting in the value that we're going to get from the automation. Time savings. So we're going to have a 69% increase or decrease in the duration to turn up new devices. 69%. 59% with OS management and 34% config changes. That's time back. That's OpEx savings. Look at the man-hour savings. I think in automation, there's two rules of thumb. A lot of people freak out about automation because they think it's going to take jobs away. I have a different view of that, as I think many of you do. I think it allows you to repurpose those jobs. Put people in positions that are going to add more value, become more strategic. And you can see some of the things that we're looking at here. 20,000 hours of device turn-up time saved. 118,000 hours of OS management saved. 94,000. This equates to close to 225,000 hours of things that people can be doing somewhere else. Being more strategic, growing the business, improving processes, staying involved and interested in automation. So we're really excited where we are, and I can't thank again the BU, Frederick, and team for all of their support on this journey, because it's been rocky at times, right? And it hasn't necessarily been rocky because of the solution, but again, getting people to embrace it, getting people to consume it. Let's not kid ourselves, automation freaks people out, right? So we're trying to take that away from the equation and show them how they can drive more value into the business. I think with that, go ahead.
Hey, Scott, just really quickly on this slide here. When you talk about the scale of deployment and the scale of growth, I mean, this becomes a necessity. And this slide right here points out the whole beauty of automation, right? We could not scale and grow the way our plans and our models show without this kind of savings in time and efficiencies. Just wanted to point that out.
Yeah, it's huge, and I think, Cox, like every other service provider, every other enterprise out there, OpEx is key. This is how you get there. And again, I want to reiterate that I'm of the rule of thumb that automation doesn't take jobs away. Automation allows you to reallocate very smart people to do other things, leveraging their value and their experience in other areas. So with that, I'm going to hand this over to Imtiaz, who is my hero. He is one of our lead developers here, and we would not be where we are today without him. So I'll hand it over to Imtiaz.
Yeah, thank you, Scott. Hi everyone, this is Imtiaz. I'm the solution lead developer, delivery team from the delivery team for Cox from CX. This is a solution overview on what kind of solution we used at Cox. So we have NSO as a orchestrator. Along with that, we also have a Cisco SmartPhy controller, which we're using for RPD management, right? That's a Cisco's controller. And we have integrated with that, and then we have business process automation as the platform on top of it, which is doing the orchestration as a workflow engine, as well as all the use cases are onboarded on top of this. So we have two kinds of applications which we build on top of this. So we have the operator apps and then the administrative or developer apps, right? That's the two distinctions between the apps which we build on BPA. So if you look at these blue color ones, these OS upgrade, config management, device activation, and device manager, these are the applications which are available for the operators to perform their day-to-day jobs, like upgrades or onboarding a new device, turning up an RPD or turning up a CBRA. There are multiple device types which we support, probably 5 to 7 different device types which we support doing the turn-ups, right? As Scott said, they plan to do 100,000 RPDs itself, and then they have another 20,000 Juniper AG devices which they want to onboard or turn up through ZTP, right? So totally automated. Even on the SmartPhy RPD activations, we have integrated with the mobile app. The operator or the field engineer will just scan the MAC address of the device and then say install. It will automatically provision that device from the mobile app, and that app is integrated with the BPA, and it's going to trigger the workflow which is doing the provisioning part, right? And then device management and then device activation, as I said, it's not just about RPDs, AG devices. There are hub router, NCS 5500s, CBR8s, those kind of devices we are onboarding. And then we have also the pre-post checks, which Scott was talking about, where even though you don't have automation of the whole maintenance window, as part of your maintenance window, you are doing every time, right? Most of the service providers, they do pre-checks, do the change as part of this planned change, and then do the post-checks. And then it takes a lot of time just do the pre-post checks, and then the change is going to be a small amount of time as part of the window. So we try to bring that down. As Scott said, it is bringing down from 45 minutes to a minute and a half. So that's a huge saving, and as part of that maintenance window, they can make more changes instead of just planning for one change, right? So that's one of the applications which we built, and then we have the ZTP solution where this is as both of them alluded towards multi-vendor. It's not Cisco device, it's a Juniper device where it brings, whenever the operator plugs in the device, it sends a SNMP notification. BPA receives that notification, and we have an SNMP listener to listen to this notification, and once they verify that the serial number is whitelisted, we trigger the workflow, which is actually onboarding the device into NSO. And then we also have integrations on the side, right, where we have inventory integration, which is Granite. So when you are planning to roll out like hundreds of thousands of devices, and it makes sense to build up your inventory as you go along instead of doing it manually outside of it, right? As the process we follow, the workflow is triggering that, adding these devices into the inventory, and then it'll go ahead, and then it is also integrated with IPAM. So each device, they need to get like 100 to 105 IP addresses for all the interfaces which we need to configure as part of the day one configuration. And we are integrating with IPAM to get all those IP addresses, and then push the device configuration, day one configuration. And not only that, we also do the pre-post checks, and everything is okay after the configuration is done. And then we also configure the adjacent devices, hub routers, so that the network is fully aware of this new device which is being onboarded. And then all along, in all these use cases, we have the ticketing integration, right, remedy, where as the process they follow, right, they want to take these pre-check summaries and then post-check summaries and then attach to the ticket so that they have a record of it. And we are integrating this with BPA with ticketing. We attach these tickets, these summary, pre-check summaries and post-check summaries automatically to the ticket. As we move along, if there are any errors or any milestones which we are crossing, we update the journals, we complete the tasks, and all those things were so far manually provisioned, manually operated. Even though you have the configuration changes going into the devices through NSO, but then you have these OSS-BSS system. That's where a lot of time and effort goes from the operator's perspective. So we are trying to minimize that time as well as part of the automation. And then the mobile app we already talked about for the SmartPhy. And then the SmartPhy is like we have two-step process. The first process is to do the staging process. The SmartPhy, even though the device is not yet shipped to the location, it'll automatically prior to probably 3 to 4 weeks prior to the device going to the location, it's already the configuration is already staged. The moment the device is in the market, they just scan it, and then the provisioning part is going to be very fast since the device is already staged. And we have NSO embedded into SmartPhy, so that is the one which is doing the provisioning on the CBR8, and then in the end, CBR8 is going to push the configuration to the RPD device. So that's more or less on the architecture side. Let me take you to the process automation, right? We already covered most of it, right? It's not just about making changes to the devices. We do a lot of operations, like do all the pre and post checks, and then IPAM to integrate to get the IP addresses, ticketing integration. It can be in Cox case we did the remedy, but for other customers we also have the ServiceNow integration to do the integration. And then we have approval stage, and even though we have approval and the remedy, but then they also wanted us have approval at the user task at the end of pre-checks. They want to approve that. They need to verify all the pre-checks are performed, all of them are passed, and then based on that they move forward with the approval to the next step. And then the reports are generated. All these summary reports or PDF reports are generated, and they are also attached to the tickets. And we have inventory integration, which we talked about. Scheduling is one of the main requests from Cox, wherein they don't want to do everything on demand, right? They want to plan ahead and then do these operations well ahead of time, right? Be it device onboarding, be it OS upgrade, or be it pre-post checks for that matter. All of them, that's one of the key features of BPA which we have. And then the cross-domain orchestration, like both NSO and SmartPhy controllers, BPA directly integrates with. And then these are some of the workflows. We have the OS upgrade workflow on the top, and then we have a pre-post checks workflow, and then this is the RPD staging workflow, 3 different workflows which we have, but we have a lot more workflows to talk about. I'll go a little deep into the OS upgrade workflow, what we did as part of this. As Scott said, the CBR8 is a very beefy device. They have like 40,000-50,000 customers configured on that. So for that, they have a complex MOP which we got from Cox. They gave us a MOP of 30 pages, and then we automated that 30-page MOP into this particular workflow. So they have a bunch of pre-checks, 10 different templates. Each template will have, some of them have 50 different commands to execute as part of that template to do the pre-checks. And it has a lot of validations as well in all those pre-checks. And at the end of that pre-checks, we show the summary. And there is some color coding here where the white boxes are all the automated tasks, and then the green boxes are the user tasks. So if you see this pre-check summary, it shows at the end of pre-checks, it shows you the summary, and then it shows you a green or red icon so that you know this pre-check is succeeded or failure. And then if they want to look at the failure output, they can still click on that and then further double click inside it and see the output, what exactly happened, why it is failing, right? So the user interface is one of the key requests as well from Cox. We've customized heavily for the look and feel or the usability perspective. It's not just about having apps there and then jumping around apps to complete one activity. Let's say OS upgrade is one application, one use case which we are building. They wanted to have a single app which can do everything for that. The operator should be able to do everything from that app itself, right? They don't want to if you want to see this workflow, they don't want to go to the workflows app and see the workflow status. Because in the workflows application, you might have 300 to 1,000 workflows running in there. And you have to search for the right instance, which instance is doing the upgrade for this particular device at this point. Instead, they just want to have the in-context solution where it can do, the operator can do the starting from the order, checking the status of each and every device, how it's performing, how the upgrade is going on, at which milestone it is happening. And then looking at the workflow, what's going in the backend, everything, and then if there are any user tasks waiting for them, even those user tasks should be able to be complete, the user should be able to complete them right from that OS upgrade app. That was one of the key requirement which we got from, I mean, it makes sense, right? It doesn't make sense to ask the user to do so many clicks to perform one operation. The user should be able to directly do it from that app because we call that OS upgrade, and then OS upgrade should be able to let the user operator do end-to-end operation from that application itself. That's one more request which we got from there. And then we did the actual upgrade, which is like 30 step page MOP or 25 steps which we have. And it takes a lot of reloads and it takes a lot of time, even if it is done manually. But then the idea here is instead of asking the user to do one upgrade as part of the maintenance window probably in 6 hours, we are asking, now with the automation, the user will be able to do 10 upgrades at the same time, the same maintenance window, because everything is automated. All he has to do is verify the pre-check summaries, and then if there are any errors, and then take the corrective action. Otherwise, all the upgrade is happening in the maintenance window in parallel, all of them, right? So the scheduling part was one of the requests for OS upgrade as well. And then the parallel processing is one more request, right? They don't want to have just one device going on. Probably right now they want to run one execution of OS upgrade, but down the line, as they're comfortable, they wanted to do multiple upgrades as part of the same maintenance window. And then to conclude it's going to do the complete post checks, and then it's not just doing the post checks, we are also doing the diff of pre and post checks. As Cox want to execute both the times, at the pre-check time and at the post-check time, they want to execute same commands to verify how it's performing, and they want to see the difference of how it is performing in side-by-side view, exactly what's going on, right? That's one of the key requirement there, and then we did that as well from here, and then it concludes the post-check summary, and then attach the tickets, attach the summary to the tickets. though it is looking very complex, but to simplify it, right, this is the process we do as for the OS upgrade, right? Do the initiate the order, then verify the pre-checks and post-checks, and then the actual upgrade is initiated, and then summary. As part of this automation, if you just to throw you some numbers, before automation, the user had to do 150 manual steps. Now from that 150 manual steps, we brought it down to 4 manual steps. And those manual steps is to just verify the summary of pre-checks and post-checks, and then proceed with approve the actual summary. After summary is verified, you approve it. Prior to that, we also have the initiate order, right? That's one of the manual step, and then you do the summary, and then you verify the pre and post check, and that's the just four steps which the operator has to do if everything goes fine. But prior to automation, there were like 150 steps which the user is doing. They're executing so many commands manually on the devices, and then eyeballing the outputs, each and every output of each and every command, and see exactly what's happening. Most often than not, they miss some of these pre-checks as well. So now everything is automated. Just look at the icon. If everything is green, just move forward, and then do the upgrade process. Right, the business requirements which we met with this automation is, we're just talking about just the OS upgrade, right? But each use case we have different requirements, and then we are meeting all other requirements. It's not just OS upgrade we did, right? We did a lot of device upgrades, device onboarding as well. We did the pre-patch check. There are multiple use cases which we did this past 1 year. And then these are some of the numbers, right? How we increase the scale per maintenance window, how we decrease the time to upgrade, right? They also have a very structured hierarchy of their markets. As Scott said, they have 20 different markets. And then each market will have different variables for their configurations, different servers to pull the images from, different servers, FTP servers. All that information is stored per market in our inventory. We've created a market variances app, which is generic for Cox. It can be used across all the use cases, and then from BPA perspective, it can be leveraged by multiple customers. In fact, which is also leveraged by many other customers of BPA. So that was one of the regional variances support which implemented. Then we implemented all the checks and balances. There are some more stuff. I don't want to cover everything as we are running out of time here. So this is the dashboard of BPA. So there are, as we said, there are on the platform side we have the core applications. We built some of the custom application for the field, and then there is a core application, but we customized heavily for the upgrade. So one of the customization which I want to talk about is we have, as we said, there are like 20 different markets, and right now NSO is managing like 50,000 devices, and they wanted to simplify the device selection from NSO. Though they have like 50,000 devices, they wanted to let the user select the region first, and then select the market based on that region, and then they want to select the device type, so that from 50,000 devices, you are bringing down the data set. If it is at the market level, you are bringing down probably to 2,000, right? And then if you are further filtering out, instead of 2,000, you are selecting a device type, you are bringing down to probably 300 to 500 devices. Now the user can play with that small data set and select the right devices instead of having access to each and everything, right? And then they also want to have the RBAC access at the region level, market level, also at the device type level. So those are the kind of customizations we did in the core application of OS upgrade to get to meet all the requirements which we do. And then we do a lot of optimization and then customization for different customers on this app as well. And then there is a custom app which we built about, which we talked about the market variances. Then there is a core application which is device activation. It's not just about one device, it's a framework, right, which can support any device type. All you have to do is create your own workflow to follow the process which you're going to do for that activation or turn up, right? So even for the OS upgrade, we did it for iOS upgrade, but then Cox engineers, they started building their own workflows. They started building iOS XR upgrade by themselves, right? Because we already have all the building blocks. And the OS upgrade leverages the process templates. That's the MOP automation component which we have, and then they leverage the golden config templates for any config changes. That's also one of the core application. And then all they have to do is build a workflow, right? And then once we have the workflow, they can plug into the OS upgrade, link that to the OS upgrade app, and they can create their own MOPs. Cisco CX doesn't have to do that. That's one of the USP of BPA as well, right? They are doing it for iOS XR now, and they're planning to do for Juniper upgrade by themselves without even Cisco's help, right? That's one of the key features of BPA. And then we also implemented the config pre-post checks as a separate application because, as we know, the time takes to even in the previous session they talked about creating the service took 4 months for them, right? And then creating service may be taking 2 months for CX, but then to take it to the field and then make it operational, it takes a long time. So till the time where you are getting the whole automation solution coming up end to end, they want to leverage as much as they can right away. And pre-post checks is one of the classic example of it, right? In the maintenance, as we already talked about, they have to do all the pre-checks and post-checks every time, and right away they can just benefit from the automation with the pre-post checks app. That's more or less on the solution which we've done. Probably I have like 5 more minutes. I wanted to cover the demo of OS upgrade, but we only have 2 minutes. I think I'll take questions right now. If you want to take a look at the demo of this solution, I'm just standing at the booth behind. Please come over. I'll give you the demo of whichever use case you wanted to see. I can demo it to you.
Yeah. So real quick before we get into the question, something that he said rings very true. So we made our automation so that we could tweak it along the way, right? So our pre-post checks, while we have it stood up, we could run it as by itself, but we can also pull part of it into the OS upgrade so that we can make the pre-post checks specific to what we're doing, the maintenance that we're doing. So that's one of the beauties of how they developed this is it is agile. We can tweak it as we need to.
Yeah, and just in closing, so as I said before, the solutions have been phenomenal. NSO, it's definitely, I mean, I've got to say that too, we're here at the NSO conference. It's true, NSO has been wonderful. I mean, anytime that we need any sort of net update, we get that in almost no time. The automation where it's hard, again, is staying with it, right? It's believing in it. Believing that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. And I can tell you that has been our biggest challenge at Cox, is getting people to embrace it. Again, there's those 2 thought processes, right? One, it's going to take my job away from me. Again, I'm in the mindset, no, it's going to help repurpose those jobs elsewhere. And then again, it's the adaption, it's the consumption, right? So, I would love to talk to some of the other service providers and see how they manage that. I'm always open for recommendations on how I can get JC's team and others to consume it, to embrace it. But I really think we're on the cutting edge of what we're going to do with Cox. I'm really excited. We're working on some things right now that are really going to take this to the next level. And again, one of the things that Imtiaz mentioned, how can we empower our customers to take on more of this, right? How can we enable them to go out and build those small to medium use cases, right? They can pull us in as need be, as their partner from CX, but we want to empower them, right? Time to market. How can they make this more efficient? So that's it.
I think the hard part is the trust, right? The technicians or the engineers are used to trusting what they're doing. Now they have to trust what something else is doing and showing a green icon for.
Which they can't see doing it in the background, right?
Yeah.
All right. Okay, time for some questions.
Yep.
So you were just saying how getting people to embrace automation is your biggest challenge. And I think some of the stats you're showing with this man-hour savings probably goes a long way towards helping to do that. I'm wondering, do you have any tips on how to do that, especially in the context of NSO? Are you doing anything beyond the NSO normally collects to be able to generate those kind of statistics?
Right now, no. Again, we're still just trying to get the adoption out there right now. I think once we get it out into the user community and we start to use it, I think we'll be able to gather additional data that will then validate what our predictions are around cost savings, time savings, things like that.
Start with low-hanging fruit.
Yeah.
The pre-post text was a huge thing for us, I think, because you can validate the timing there, and you also develop trust with the techs and the engineers, running that. They could do their own checks if they want to and compare.
It's like a fine wine, right? Once you have a couple, you want a little more, and a little more, and a little more, and then you're drinking the bottle. That's kind of where we're at right now. We're sipping the wine right now, hoping they like the wine and they want more.
Great, thank you.
I hope that answers your question.
Any more questions?
Hi. You said at the beginning that you have 100,000 service instances, if I remember correctly, and you said that you have all sorts of variation of the service. So, what was your goal? Did you try to unify this and then automate it in a single or, let's say, fewer configuration, or you try to create a generic model and try? How did you do that?
We really did it on a market by market variance, and we really applied the 80-20 rule, right? Let's take the 80% that are most alike, and through the automation process, make those look the same. And then we just said that 20% somebody's going to have to manually go in there and change those. So we weren't able to address all of them, but through prototyping and whatnot, we really applied that 20-20, the 80-20 rule, I think. Does that make sense?
Yeah, of course. How did you discover what is 80%?
A lot of work. So the team, and I don't know, Nick Kamani's here or some of the other folks, but we really did a lot of prototyping, going in, pulling the data from the field, look at variations, almost doing pre and post checks on the services, right? And it was just a lot of manual data pull to determine what that 80% looked like. In some, in individual markets, it was easy. The variances across the different markets was a challenge, but that also allowed us to take that 80% and then help Cox develop a new standard for a lot of those services, for new greenfield services. Now we can make them all look the same, regardless of the market. I will tell you that was one of the most difficult journeys that probably took us a year to do. And to be honest with you, there's still some reluctance from the customer to deploy that because they're worried, what does that look like? What does that change as it relates to the impact of the customer? Is there a truck roll related? Is there a site visit related? So there's still a lot of ongoing conversations about how we're going to make that work. Right now the focus has been keep the greenfield going, and they can implement and do the brownfield opportunities as they want to.
Okay, thank you.
I wish I had a better answer for you to say that and it's fixed. But again, it's not easy stuff.
So I brought a couple of my guys that are on my team, Rob and Craig, sitting in the middle there. Our team represents kind of an enterprise version of old term would have been DOCSIS operations. My team is made up of members that sit out in the different markets or the different regions. So we're part of that funnel, trying to figure out where we can standardize and take advantage of standardizing where we can to build up that 80% more, right?
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Cisco, the bridge to possible.